and welcome to Talk of the Town on 99.7, 1450 WHTC and WHTC.com.
We welcome you to Talk of the Town for this Thursday, September the 10th. I'm Gary Stevens. CBS News at the top of the hour. Cammie McCormick will return. Following that and WHTC News with Peg McNichol, we will air Governor Whitmer's comments as she has another update on the COVID-19 situation. And according to a statement from her office, the announcement will be the launch of a first-of-its-kind initiative to help Michigan workers and their families during the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. You will hear the opening remarks from Governor Whitmer, along with Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist and State Department of Health and Human Services Chief Medical Executive Dr. Janae Caldoun. And after Patty Vandenberg's What's New Around Howland, we'll talk about those remarks and more. Some open line time. And then at 11 o'clock, it is Wellspring from Spectrum Health Zeeland Community Hospital. But on this second Thursday of the month, it is our first segment, Ask the Judge. And we are joined by District Court Magistrate Vern Helder. He joins us from the, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Vern, you are joining us from the District Courthouse in Holland this morning.
Good morning. Actually, I'm in Grand Haven this morning.
Okay, so you're at the county courthouse at the county seat in Grand Haven. So, but your duties include the district court, which has 3 offices: Holland, Hudsonville, or Georgetown Township, and Grand Haven as well.
That is correct. We have 3 court locations, 1 district court with 3 court locations, and I travel to all 3 of them.
What's your schedule like in terms of, how do you have a certain day? Okay, it's Monday, I got to be in Holland. Tuesday, I got to be in Grand Haven. Thursday, maybe Grand Haven. Then Friday, Georgetown. Or does it just move around depending on the docket?
No, I have a set schedule every week. So Mondays, I split my time between Holland and Grand Haven, and then Tuesdays and Fridays, I am in Holland. Thursdays, I'm in Grand Haven, and Wednesdays in Hudsonville. So.
Okay, that's the schedule. In other words, now you know where Vern Helder is going to be. But please don't take out any aggression on him. There's some friendly, or won't be so friendly, Ottawa County Sheriff's deputies protecting the courthouse to make sure nothing untoward happens. But it is the Ask the Judge segment where we bring in a judge, or in this case, a magistrate, to answer your questions about some legal matters from a judicial point of view. But we want to, first of all, set some ground rules. Besides the usual ground rules, we're under an 8-second delay. So if you call us at 395-1450, there'll be a delay. So in terms of turn down the radio and we can chat over the phone. Secondly, 1 call per day. So that's the other ground rule, basic ground rules. But with Vern, we don't talk about ongoing court issues in terms of if there's a case going before the courts, we don't discuss it. We might talk in generalities, and that's fine in terms of a general case, but we will not talk about a specific case. And full disclosure, Vern Helder is running for a seat in the district court bench that will be vacated by the retiring Susan Jonas at the end of the year. But we will not, in this particular segment, talk about the campaign itself. Vern will be joining us a little bit later on between now and November 3rd to discuss the campaign in particular. But in this particular case, we're only going to talk about the court. Vern's duties, what the duties of a magistrate are, and some general court questions that you may have. So if you have a question for Vern Helder, please call us and keep those things in mind at 395-1450. Good morning. You're on the line with Magistrate Vern Helder.
Good morning. I have a question. I wondered how a judge who is holding sessions only virtually can make a decision from the court order to have a child with health issues be in person in school.
Interesting point of view there. I'll let you go and you can hear the answer on the air. Thank you. Vern, how do you handle that type of situation?
Well, a lot of the court hearings are now open to the public again. We've opened our doors. We've been open for a couple months. But we limit the number of people that can come into the courthouse. So we had stages that we had to go through, and we had to meet certain criteria before we could expand our open hours policy. Currently, we allow people into the courthouse or into the courtrooms as long as they can socially distance. That's been changed from a maximum of 10, which would include the judge or magistrate, a court recorder, and then the people that are in court for certain cases. We do try to spread out the cases too, so that we don't schedule them all at the same time on the same day any longer. We used to do arraignments, for example, in Holland on one particular day, Tuesday mornings. Now we do arraignments every day, Monday through Friday.
No.
So I'm not sure, the child that has to go to court, that would be a circuit court case. But I think they would, I'm not sure if I understand the question exactly, but there are ways to have people come in and testify in person. But we do allow testimony and certain things to be done by video conferencing as well, or Zoom meetings.
Now, the thing is, though, and it does bring to a larger point, not just a particular point there was that the caller brought up, but really a judge needs to judge when it's a judge making the decision, not a jury situation. But when a judge has to make a decision, you have to base it on the facts of the case. And a lot of times those facts are just, I hate to say it, black and white. It's right in front of you. And a lot of times maybe the arguments, don't have to necessarily be quote unquote in person.
That would be true. We have authority under the court rules, and I've done this a few times. We have authority to do video conferencing for cases. And for example, I do the small claims cases and or traffic ticket hearings, and we have allowed people to appear via Zoom in the courtroom. Sometimes both parties are on Zoom. More often than not, maybe one party is participating by Zoom and the other party is participating in the courtroom. We've done it specifically with individuals or companies, mostly individuals, I guess, that are not within the state of Michigan. So if they have to travel for some distance, if they're on the East Coast, for example, we do allow them to participate by video conferencing. And it's similar to having the person appear in court. We have them in front of us. We can ask them questions. We can take their testimony. We ask that they provide the exhibits beforehand, so that it's very cumbersome to get the exhibits between the parties during a video conferencing call. But we do allow it by video conferencing, and you can make a determination based on that, much like you would with a person that is appearing in front of you in court. So you have the opportunity to listen to their testimony. The other party has an opportunity to maybe question their testimony, and then we can gather a response from that. So it's a little bit more cumbersome, but obviously under the circumstances that we're under, we're doing what we can to have as many court hearings during this time, whether it's in person or whether it's by video conferencing or through a Zoom meeting.
395-1450 if you have a question for District Court Magistrate Vern Helder. This might be a tricky question for you to answer as a jurist. And I use the term jurist as, a magistrate, someone who has to make an adjudication. Mm-hmm. You want to base your decision on the facts. You want to base your decision legal precedent, perhaps. But is it tough to take the human factor out of decisions? And to a certain extent, maybe not so much with your particular cases that you would handle as a magistrate, but as a jurist. A lot of times a defense attorney worth their salt would, make a passion plea, and it comes across better in person, and it comes across better by how they present it than the actual words it said. To a certain extent, do you still see that a little bit with the, could it be seen, and I'm maybe conjecturing, could it be seen a little bit with the video conferencing and the video testimony, or has that aspect sort of been taken away a little bit because we've had so much video testimony coming in now, especially since March and the outbreak that came out?
Yeah, so, from my perspective, a lot of the trials and things of that nature are done in person or in the courtroom. As I indicated, I have done a couple small claims cases by video conferencing, but I still think you can get the passion and, you can get the gist of what a party has. To take the human factor out is difficult. We all have life experiences, and those life experiences have made us who we are. And you can certainly understand certain situations where, somebody is put into a position where they really didn't intend on going, but they're there because of life circumstances. Our role is really to take the facts of the case and apply those facts to the law. Sometimes it's not an easy thing to do, but I personally do my best to try to make what I think is a fair and just decision. I listen to all of the evidence. I understand that people, when they come to court, whether in my experience, because I do small claims and traffic ticket hearings, whether it's those kinds of hearings, which some people may think are small or minor, they're really not to the people that come to court. I want them to feel like they've had their day in court. They have the right to come to court. We want them to come to court if they have a question on what they're charged with, or if they dispute a small claims matter. And then I listen to the evidence and make the best determination that I can based on the facts and the law. So there is always a human factor. People, for example, may not be able to pay fines and costs because of financial situations. And, so it does make it more difficult.
Again, if you have a question for District Court Magistrate Vern Helder, he'll take it at 395-1450, 395-1450. I know you sort of alluded a little bit to it in earlier responses, but I just want to get the little bit of the ground rules in that regard. What exactly does a magistrate do in the district court setup in terms of maybe taking some of the caseload away from the actual district court judges?
Sure. So the magistrate, me as a magistrate, but magistrates in general are hired by the judges, and they're really hired to take some of the workload away. For example, we do all of the traffic hearings. An initial traffic hearing is called an informal hearing. Unless a person specifically requests a formal hearing, we set it for an informal hearing. Those go in front of the magistrates. And then the officer will testify, the respondent testifies, and then we make a decision based, again, on the facts and the law. That can be appealed. If it's appealed, it then goes to a formal hearing. But as magistrates, we can also arraign and sentence on certain misdemeanor pleas or misdemeanor cases. The penalty has to be a penalty of 93 days or less and a fine of $500 or less. There are some exceptions. A drunk driving case, for example, or operating while intoxicated is what we call a 93-day misdemeanor. So it falls under the criteria that a magistrate could handle as far as the maximum sentence and the maximum fine plus court costs. But we as magistrates do not put people on probation, and that's often what happens. But that's one specific case or type of case that a magistrate cannot hear. We do many search warrants or arrest warrants, but the deputies or detectives will come either and find a magistrate. Again, they don't do that in person so much anymore. We do it we have a program called DocuSign, so it's all done electronically, so we don't have face-to-face conferences or confrontations very often anymore. But as a magistrate, we review and sign search warrants. We review and authorize criminal charges with both misdemeanor and felony cases. We perform as magistrates hundreds of weddings per year, which a judge has the authority to do, and the judges do one or a few of them a year when they feel that, if someone asks them specifically, or maybe if we're unavailable and they've scheduled a wedding. But most of the time that goes in front of the magistrate. And then, of course, I do all of the small claims cases in Ottawa, and that's part of the reason I travel between, and I do the arraignments in Ottawa County, but that's part of the reason I travel between the 3 court locations, is to help each judge out at each location.
Now, let me ask you this about warrants and getting a warrant when a law enforcement entity, be it the sheriff's department or a local police department, comes up and says, we have to get a search warrant, execute a search warrant for certain things. What is the basis, not basis, but what is what criteria needs to be proven by the law enforcement entity before a warrant is issued?
So it's not like a criminal charge where the detective or the deputy or officer has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that what they're looking for is likely to be where it's at. But it's really more likely than not are they going to be able to find what they're looking for in the search warrant? And it's really oftentimes building the case. They need to find information. And so we do a lot of search warrants, for example, with IP addresses and, social media accounts, trying to find out who has the account, where they used the account, was it in Ottawa County? And there's all different types of cases. So you've got fraud cases where someone might have money or their identity taken. And so we need to find out who did that and where the money went and things of that nature. Or for example, on a drunk driving case, if someone is arrested, we do a search warrant for a blood draw. And they have to present enough facts to show that there's a reasonable likelihood that what they're going to get as a result of the search warrant is in fact what they're looking for. So for example, with a person operating while intoxicated, they do the field sobriety test first. They've got some indication, maybe they smell alcohol on the breath. They've got some indication that the person is driving under the influence. And if that person doesn't consent to a data master, so they have a PBT, and then the next step is a data master, which is admissible into court, the evidence of that. If they refuse, then they call us and they get a search warrant for blood. Or for example, if they blow a 0 on a PBT, but they feel they may be under the influence of something, then they make a request for a blood draw. But there's the cases are vastly different. There's all kinds of reasons to get search warrants or to ask for evidence, ask for a search warrant so they can obtain evidence. So
but the thing is too, and the other point is that the decision, I would think, as a magistrate in your case, Vern Helder, is the fact that you want to make a decision based on, hey, if the law enforcement entity is doing, needs this information, but also we're dealing with some privacy issues. We're dealing with somebody's a livelihood, and sometimes that has to be taken into consideration. Is this the right, is this okay? I mean, can we do this? Can the old-fashioned wiretap issue in that regard? That it's not cut and dry.
Yeah, it's so you have to weigh all of the factors in. Is their reason for the request, a valid reason for the request? Because you're right, a search warrant, a person has the expectation of privacy. And so you have to get past that expectation of privacy when you authorize a search warrant and allow them to, maybe seize a computer and look at what evidence is on the computer, seize a cell phone and look at what communications may have been done, between parties. And social media is a big part of most people's lives. And people communicate through social media very often. And they communicate things that you would be surprised they communicate. But, they have to have a reason for looking at that device or seizing the device and searching it. That is a valid reason. So, yeah, we take that into consideration as well.
And we're talking about a search warrant as opposed to an arrest warrant, which would come in Ottawa County through Prosecutor Ron France's office, not from the courts itself.
Yes, we have local law enforcement agencies as well that will issue complaint and warrants. So the Zeeland Police Department, for example, or the Holland Police Department or Grand Haven. Other than that, most of them come through the Sheriff's Department or through the Ottawa County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. But the local jurisdictions also have their own prosecuting attorneys. So City of Holland, City of Zeeland, and City of Grand Haven. But yeah, that's where they come from.
Okay, so it's just a difference, if we got to execute a warrant, well, it's a search warrant and not an arrest warrant. There is a little bit of difference there.
Exactly right.
Good morning. You're on the line with Vern Helder.
Oh, good morning, Mr. Stevens. Good morning, Mr. Helder. Thank you for your wonderful service for Ottawa County. I'm kind of concerned about the use of what's called recreational marijuana. I've been noticing there are a lot of accidents. I talked to the postal air carrier. She sees people driving stoned, as she says, and our governor is not an opponent of so-called recreational marijuana. As a result, there's been a lot of accidents, and they're starting to raise their insurance rates. I wonder what's your comment about marijuana. It's got something called THC, a psychoactive drug, and why our top officials approve of marijuana. Thank you.
I appreciate the call. Thank you very much, Vern.
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's really not much different than somebody that's operating while intoxicated. It's either intoxicated by liquor or they're operating under the influence of a controlled substance. Obviously, we want to protect everybody that's on the road from people that are driving under the influence. It makes it a little bit, I would say, a little bit trickier to maybe process a case with a drunk or with an impaired driver. They can be impaired by a legal drug. It doesn't have to be an illegal drug. So you've seen the ads where it says, do not operate heavy machinery or automobiles under, while using this drug. Anybody that's impaired by any substance, whether it's legal or illegal, is not allowed to drive, or it's a criminal offense if they drive under the influence. It is more difficult. There are more and more officers that are becoming what's called DRE, or drug recognition expert. And so they're trained specifically to determine whether the person is under the influence of something. But yeah, drunk drivers or driving under the influence of any controlled substance that causes insurance companies to have to pay increases everybody's rates. And that's an unfortunate situation.
But again, the situation with you as a jurist in the legal system, also, to use the old Dick Wolf line, law and order, you guys don't make the laws, you only enforce the laws. So you're, it's kind of tough. That decision needs to be made by lawmakers, not by those who are behind a bench or wearing the blue or brown.
That's correct. And really, when the laws are changed by the voters, the laws aren't necessarily written very clearly, and there's a lot of open-ended issues that, by a referendum on the ballot, they don't address. And they really would have been better addressed by the legislatures if they had created it. But I'm not sure that most people were in that field were in favor of either medical marijuana or recreational use marijuana. But it does leave a lot of open-ended issues when it's done by a referendum on the ballot. We do the best we can. We do the best we can with, under the law. And, we do want to keep everybody safe, protect society. That's part of our responsibility.
He is Magistrate Vern Helder of the District Court, and he has joined us this morning on our Talk of the Town program to talk about some of the jurisprudence matters from his perspective. And Vern, as always, we appreciate the time you spend with us on WHTC's Talk of the Town. I look forward to chatting with you again between now and November 3rd when you are running for a District Court judge seat. Vern, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's always enjoyable to join your show.
All right, thank you very much, Vern Helder on 99.7 and 1450 WHTC.